Vlogging in public. We're gonna vlog in public here from my old neighborhood. I am currently in my hometown that I grew up in. 11,000 people at that time. I think there's 9,000 people now. And we're just gonna take a little walk through my old neighborhood. I'll show you the house that I grew up in back in the 60s and 70s. And there was a video I did about a year ago called Marking My Timeline, where I talked about down at the bottom of this hill there was a house where a bunch of hippies lived. And I remember just, being intrigued because they had this garage band and they played Iron Man over and over again. But my mom and dad would never let me go down there and check it out because I was kind of a young kid and they didn't want me being influenced by the hippie thing going on down there. Probably a lot of pot smoking and stuff, and just not a good scene for a young boy. But anyway, let's take a walk down the street here. This is the street. Well, as we turn the corner here, this is the street that I grew up on, and we'll walk past the old house. I'll show you where I had my first real job when I was 16 years old. So anyway, yeah, this house right here with the Christmas lights still on the window, and it is August, is the house that I grew up in. A simple house. We really didn't have a whole lot when I was growing up, but it was enough. And what's funny is next door to us was a family. They were bad news. I wasn't allowed to play with them as a kid because they were really bad news. And I remember me and my buddy here who lived across the street here. Of course, there's no house there anymore, but my buddy Mike lived across the street here. And his grandparents actually had a house right in that vacant lot. And then behind that house, my buddy Mike lived in a trailer. And there's somebody driving by here wondering what I'm doing. And he and I used to have rock fights with the people who lived in that house. We used to throw rocks at each other. One funny thing, I'll take you back here. This is where we used to play war. And when we played war, man, we played with real BB guns, which added a whole new element to war. And usually we'd have like 3 or 4 guys on a side, and we went back in the woods there and would run tactics and try to take over each other's territory. And if you got shot, or if you shot your enemy, you know that they got shot, or you got shot because it hurt. And that tree right up there is, we used to climb up there and snipe. But I remember one time, excuse me, my friend Mike and I were standing on this very street here. It was funny. Standing on, this is just a residential area. There's a hell of a lot of traffic. I can't believe it. But anyway, my friend Mike and I were standing on this street, okay? He's standing facing me from that direction, and I'm standing facing this way. And he comes up to me with this BB gun, and he's got me point blank. He's got a bead on me point blank. I mean, we're standing literally just a couple feet away from each other. And I go, "You're not going to shoot me, are you?" And he's laughing. And the son of a gun pulls the trigger, and he shoots me, boom, right in the chest. I'm like, I had to dig this BB out of my chest. It was unbelievable. So I got pissed, and I went home, and he went home, and I sat at home, and I was thinking about this. I think I got to get this SOB back. So after an hour or two, I call him up. I go, "Mike, I'm not mad at you anymore. Why don't you come on over and we'll hang out." So what I did was I went up on the roof of my house. I mean, up on the top, after I called him up, and I waited for him to come over. And when he knocked on the door over there, I looked down at him from the roof, And I'm looking down like this, and he's looking up at me, and I go, Mike! And I've got a bead on him. I mean, excuse me, right in the middle of his chest, I got a bead on him, and I pull the trigger. Kapow! Yeah, I don't get mad. I get even. So anyway, let's walk down the street here. Yeah, this is the street I grew up on, and down at the end of the street here is the store that I worked at. I was a butcher, believe it or not. When I was 16 years old, it was my first job. I made $1.75 an hour, and I thought I was in freaking hog heaven. And it was a fun job. I enjoyed it, and you know, back then, you know, every penny I made was free money. So, what the hell? So anyway, as we get to the end of the street here, this is where you say, oh, you know, there used to be a house here at the end of the street. It looks like they tore it down finally. It was like ready to fall down. There was a house in this vacant lot up until about a year ago. But yeah, there's the store that I worked at. It's undergone quite a bit of changes over the last 30 years. I started working there 30 years ago, and brings back a lot of memories. I remember the first time when I worked there, the guy that I was training with, it was like right after school got out in the summer, and the guy I was training with was killed in a car accident. So that was like my first experience having somebody that was really close to my age that died. Anyway, yeah, this brings back a lot of memories going down this street. We used to, one thing we used to do when we were kids is we used to get all the neighborhood dogs together, and we'd hitch them up to a wagon, and we used to ride up and down the streets. It was pretty fun. And that hill that I showed you too, where the hippies live, we used to ride our wagons down that hill too. At the bottom of that hill there's a cross street, so if there was a car coming from the through the cross street, of course there's no brakes on the wagon, so you're in rough shape there if you happen to get hit. Needless to say, my folks really didn't appreciate that activity. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to cut this thing off. It's kind of windy out here. I'm going to cut this thing off. I've had a lot of cars drive by here. I've had a lot of people look at me like, you know, what are you doing? But hey, vlogging in public is a lot of fun. I say you should try it. Yes.